Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today on our webinar on revenue-based financing. My name is Sabina Kwan Hin, and I am the marketing manager here at Flow Capital, and I'll be leading us through today's discussion and here to answer any questions you may have. So before we begin, it's important to note that you can ask questions at any time by tweeting us at Flow Capital Corp. And if you miss anything from today's webinar, we'll be uploading a recording of it and posting it on our blog, along with all the questions and answers addressed in this session. So we can go ahead and jump right into it. So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce Flow Capital. We provide founder-friendly growth capital through our alternative financing structures, which include revenue-based financing and venture debt. We're based in Toronto and have additional operations in California, and our team has a strong background in entrepreneurship, startups, technology, and venture capital, just to name a few. So we've seen everything from not only investing in companies, but also building them as well. In terms of our investments, we're primarily focused on Canada and the US, but as of this past summer, we actually hopped across the pond and made our first international investment in the UK as well. So we're actively looking to keep expanding our efforts internationally. Since 2016, we've deployed over 80 million in growth capital across 46 companies and are looking to double these numbers within the next couple of years. So looking ahead at our agenda for today's session, my goal for our webinar is to educate attendees about revenue-based financing as an alternative or complement to traditional debt and equity, while also helping you understand if this form of financing is a good fit for your company. So over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, we'll be diving into what is revenue-based financing, including the overview, pros and cons, who's it for, when to use it, and how it compares to traditional debt and equity. Next, we'll dive into the types of companies best suited for RBF, including industries and what stage in their business life cycle is best. Afterwards, I'll go into Flow Capital's revenue-based financing loans, including what a typical loan structure looks like, our investment criteria, and our funding process. Last but not least, I'll go ahead into the Q&A portion of the webinar. So if you take a look at this graph, it shows the number of VC investments under 5 million from 2015 to 2018. This number has gone down from around 6,700 to 5,100, and it isn't because VCs are spending less money. What's actually happening is VCs are spending larger dollars on fewer investments in search for riding the wave of that next unicorn. So the question is, where does this leave companies that aren't wanting or suited to 10x growth? Revenue-based financing, also known as revenue sharing, royalty financing, or revenue-linked royalties, is a form of financing where investors inject growth capital in exchange for a percentage of monthly revenue. Monthly payments, therefore, are adjusted based on the natural ups and downs of your company's revenue. During high revenue months, your payments are higher. During low revenue months, your monthly payments are lower. So this means that revenue-based financing, or RBF, adjusts with your business, and this flexibility helps to make sure that you're able to stay on top of your payments each month, as long as you're growing. So in terms of where it fits in the life cycle stage of a business, in terms of when a company can and should use it, revenue-based financing works as long as the company is generating revenue and plans to keep growing. That being said, it's not for pure startups where companies are pre-revenue. That's where bootstrapping, using friends and family, angels, or VC money is used. If you want to pause this webinar and take a screenshot of this graph, it also shows a representation of the different debt, equity, and RBF financing options available to you and where this fits into the business lifecycle stages. So now taking a look at how RBF compares to traditional debt and equity financing, it actually fits right in between bank loans and equity, both on the risk and the reward side. So taking a look at risk involved from the investor's perspective, if your company fails under venture capital, that's where the VC bears the biggest loss because they aren't going to be receiving their capital back. That's the risk that they decided to take, which is why they secure that risk by taking a large percentage of equity in companies in hopes of landing the next unicorn. If a company defaults under a bank loan, the bank will often have personal guarantees in place, so they're able to receive all or a majority of their loan back. Under RBF, the risk falls in between bank and equity because we don't require personal guarantees, so we're not recovering nearly as much as a bank loan would. So on the flip side, if a company succeeds, this is where the VC really wins. Because they've taken a large portion of equity, they'll also receive a large portion of the company's success. Bank loans, on the other hand, will see lower rewards because they don't take an equity position, and it's just the monthly interest payments that they're generating that revenue from. In terms of RBF lies in between banks and VCs once again because due to that collection of percentage of monthly revenue, which as the company grows increases as well over time. So looking from the entrepreneur's point of view, if the company fails, there's a huge potential loss if financed through a bank loan due to that personal guarantee. You'll be liable to pay off the loan if your company cannot, so you should really bear this in mind when applying for a business bank loan. Equity and RBF financing behave similarly under a default where there is minimal loss. In RBF, if the company fails, there's no personal guarantee, no personal recourse back to management, so in that way it behaves much more like equity. If the company succeeds, the cost of capital for RBF is much more than a bank loan, but much closer, as opposed to the cost of capital under equity, which is potentially infinite, depending on what the exit valuation is. So taking a look at the pros and cons of revenue-based financing, and I'll start with the cons here. As mentioned in the previous slide, revenue-based financing is much more expensive than bank loans given the nature that the investments are higher risk. So this means that if you're unsure if your company has the ability to grow or afford to make those monthly payments, then you should probably wait until you're more ready. Companies also must be post-revenue, so pure startups won't have this option. As mentioned before, they can have other options such as bootstrapping, friends and family, VCs, or angel investing. And lastly, as opposed to equity financing, RBF does involve monthly payments. So if you're not interested in monthly payments, then I don't recommend. And you'd probably be better off with equity financing. But if your company grows much larger, then you'll catch more of the upside if financed under revenue-based financing. So on the flip side, going on to pros now, one of the main benefits we often hear from founders is they're able to accrete equity value while minimizing dilution. So being able to maintain more of the equity in your company than you otherwise would under equity financing is a huge plus, especially when this also means that we as investors don't take board seats. So founders are able to grow their companies to their vision under their control. Next, payments are flexible and grows as the business grows. So as opposed to bank loans where monthly interest payments are fixed, if your company experiences a slower month, under revenue-based financing, your payments will reflect that, so you aren't burdened with a payment you can't afford. Lastly, there's a shared alignment between the investor and founder towards revenue growth. So both the founder and investor wins when the company grows its revenue, and there's no requirements for absurd 10x plus returns. So in terms of the companies who are best suited for RBF, this includes companies that are growing, pre, post, or anti-VC, and have achieved or are close to profitability. So taking a look at the first attribute, the cost of RBF is worth it for companies that are experiencing growth. More importantly, RBF helps founders grow their companies under long-term sustainable growth as opposed to the growth at all costs attitude many VCs push as they strive for those 10x returns. Next, RBF works for companies that are pre, post, or anti-VC. RBF can help increase business valuation while minimizing equity dilution, which is especially ideal for companies that are pre or post VC. Specifically for post VC companies, RBF is a great way to extend funding rounds, acting much like a bridge round, while again not diluting any equity. And lastly, for the anti-VC founder, RBF is one of the best options you can choose because you're able to access a large amount of growth capital while minimizing equity dilution. So last on the list, you can apply and receive RBF if your company is not yet profitable. Investors will use metrics such as cash runway, projected growth to determine your eligibility. So as long as you have a clear path to profitability, you should be able to secure RBF. So up until this point, I've mentioned a few comparisons throughout the presentation so far, but now I'll give you an overview of the comparisons between traditional bank loans, VC angel funding, and Flow Capital's revenue-based financing. So in terms of equity, banks generally don't ask for any. With venture debt and earlier stage bank debt, they'll ask for warrants, so Flow financing is similar in that regard. VCs, however, will take a moderate to extreme dilution position because this is essentially how they get paid. On the other hand, Flow Capital, once again, is in the middle of both the bank loan and the VCs, where we take minimal equity dilution. So for personal guarantees, banks do require personal guarantees and often have strict covenants. VCs have equity protected provisions through their board seats, and under flow financing, you won't find the extremely restrictive covenants you would find under a bank loan. In terms of payments, VCs are extremely flexible because they don't require any payments. On the other end of the extreme, banks are inflexible due to their fixed monthly interest payments. Once again, Flow Capital falls in between with our highly flexible variable payments that are calculated based on a percentage of your company's monthly revenue. So in terms of the attitude investors have, banks provide basically no added value, and it's basically a get in, get out transaction. VCs, on the other hand, shine under this aspect because they'll work with you to grow your business because they're looking for those big returns and have that growth at all costs attitude. So they're willing to help entrepreneurs and founders with as much as they can. Flow Capital, on the other hand, are aligned with our founders, the founders we invest in respect to the shared vision for revenue growth. So we offer a hands-off approach that allows founders to be in control of growing their business. And if you have no other angels or VCs you're working with, we're happy to make any introductions and even help with some marketing and PR by highlighting our investment companies in the content that we share. Last but not least, when it comes to speed, revenue-based financing with Flow is by far the fastest option you'll have. With banks, you can expect anywhere from 2 to 6 months as a fundraising period, whereas VCs, you'll expect anywhere from 3 to 9 months. And with Flow Capital, we like to fund companies in as little as 4 weeks. So taking a look at Flow Capital's investment criteria, for financials, our sweet spot is companies with roughly $1 million or more in annual revenue or ARR. Companies as I mentioned earlier, don't have to be profitable, but should have a clear path to profitability. And last, we like companies that are capital efficient and nimble. Something not mentioned that we do also take into consideration is the management team. And we look for founders who have their skin in the game, have a high degree of ownership, and are fully invested in the business. As mentioned previously, we focus our investments in the US and Canada, but are looking to expand our efforts internationally as well, starting with the UK. In terms of one question we often receive is, do you only invest in SaaS or tech companies? And the answer to that question is no. We're industry agnostic because we believe that there are so many industries and types of companies that benefit from RBF. We do, however, prefer tech-enabled businesses given their ability to scale and grow quickly. But in general, we are industry agnostic. So as long as the company is experiencing high growth, we'd love to look more into it and consider a investment deal. But in general, we do stay away from construction and brick and mortar retail. So our business loans are comprised of three main elements: the principal amount, monthly payments, and the buyout. So the principal is the amount of growth capital we give to a company. This ranges anywhere from around $500,000 to $2 million in the first tranche and up to $4 million in follow-on rounds. Our monthly payments are comprised of two components, a minimum payment and the percentage of revenue. So both are combined into the monthly payment, and the actual amount of this will depend entirely on the stance of the company. However, overall, it's structured in a way to recoup 1x over the next 3.5 to 4 years to get our initial investment back. So lastly, we have the investment buyout. So the company or the founder themselves can retire the loan at any point, and this buyout can range anywhere from 1 to 3x at a point that makes the most sense for not only us, but also the investee company. It's important to note here that there are no fixed terms with our RBF loans, meaning that we place entire control in the founder's hands in terms of when they decide to buy out the loan. So if you are interested in learning more about our RBF offering, I encourage you to visit our website. Something that you could do is you can find out if you pre-qualify for flow financing, and you can do so through our online forum at www.flowcap.com/contact-us. And within less than a minute, you can find out if you what your pre-qualification status is. If you get confirmed and are pre-qualified for flow financing, you can access our full application form that will be reviewed by our investment team. Once that's submitted, a member of our investment team will contact you, and from there, we'll schedule a call to learn more about your company and address any questions you may have. After this, the investment team will send you a term sheet for you to review and sign. And once this is done, the due diligence process begins and the funding process is fully underway. So now that you know the basics about revenue-based financing and Flow Capital, I'll switch over to some of the questions that have been asked. So the first question is, do revenue-based financing investors only fund SaaS companies? And as I mentioned before, the quick answer to this is no. Although SaaS companies are the ideal candidates for RBF due to their sticky revenues, it also applies to a wide range of companies in various types of industries. So yeah, the answer is no, although there are a lot of RBF investors who only do fund SaaS companies, Flow Capital is open to all. Is revenue-based financing the best source of capital for startups? So revenue-based financing works best for companies that are experiencing at least 2x growth within the next 4 years. So I would say if your company is experiencing anything less than that, it might be the wrong option. So that's just something to bear in mind. Next question is, why is revenue-based financing still uncommon? Although revenue-based financing has been used for decades in industries such as oil, mining, and movies, it is relatively new with respect to business investments. So companies, startups are generally used to traditional debt and equity financing options, including bank loans or venture capital. So there is still limited awareness on alternative financing options. That being said, we're starting to see a lot more RBF lenders entering the space, so awareness will increase alongside that. Does revenue-based financing show up as debt on the balance sheet? And the quick answer to this is yes, but I would also make sure that your accountant is fully aware of what this looks like in your financials. Are there any penalties for paying out the loan early? There's no penalty for paying out the loan early since there is no maturity dates, no fixed terms. The founder has the ability to pay the loan in any point in time after 1x has been reached. Do you have additional options for financing my company? The answer is yes, we do offer not only revenue-based financing, but also venture debt. On our website, you can find our Founder's Guide to Venture Debt, which explains the ins and outs of what exactly this is. And you can expect to see another webinar from us in the future explaining venture debt. So we work with companies to structure a deal that's the best option for them, which might solely be RBF, might solely be revenue-based or venture debt, or it could also be a blend of both. Is it a plus to say we're VC-backed? It's not necessarily a plus to say that you're VC-backed. I heard an analogy recently that explained that being VC-backed was like strapping a rocket onto your back, meaning that you'll either make it to the moon or most likely crash along the way. So for any founder, any entrepreneur, I encourage you to research and explore all of your options to learn what you think is best for you and your company. RBF is different from VC because we're not taking 30% of your company and we're not putting yourselves on our board to make company decisions. What's the best way to prep for qualifying for Flow Capital? And I'd say the main 4 things. One is making sure that you have annual revenue or ARR of roughly $1 million or more. It's important also to make sure that you're not burning through tons of cash. Third, you should have a clear path to profitability if you're not profitable already, and have a good plan to explain how you'll use the funds. And lastly, I think another big thing that's often overlooked is being prepared with high quality corporate docs and making sure to hire a good bookkeeper or accountant to make sure that everything makes sense when we look into your company's financials. What are some advantages of Flow Capital compared to other RBF lenders? So as I've stated before in this webinar, there are many RBF lenders who solely invest in SaaS or tech companies. And I think the great thing about Flow is we're open to industries beyond just tech or SaaS because we really do believe in the financing structure and encourage companies beyond these industries to apply as well. In addition, as opposed to just providing RBF, we also provide venture debt. So we have the capacity to offer both structures and the ability for companies to leverage both depending on what best fits their company and future growth plans. So this concludes today's session. I thank everybody, each and every one of you, for joining us today, and we'd love to hear from you. So if you would like to email us, you can email us at marketing@flowcap.com. if you'd like to apply for revenue-based financing or have any general inquiries, you can apply or message us at www.flowcap.com/contact-us. Or if you prefer to speak over the phone, you can always give us a call at 416-777-0383. So thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and join us for our next webinar. Thank you.